Hello. How are you? I hope this finds you well. Welcome. I am checking in because it's been a little while again. I've been really busy working on a project. If you're new here, welcome. I'm probably going to talk about some spiritual stuff, and you would have known that by the title of this video, likely. Unless it ends up just being a personal update. We'll see. I do want to share something that I've been going through recently, but, I think it can also help with spiritually minded people, to expand their view and just see someone else's point of view and experience. And mine is that even though I've been going through life and feeling like I'm pretty much like honoring myself, like I wasn't like aware of trying to fit in or, people pleasing or, I had kind of conquered all that stuff, right? So as I was going along and the universe sort of created this experience for me that woke me up to another level. And I don't know, I'm not going to go into details about what that experience was exactly. I already tried to record a video this morning before I left for the day. And I did spell that out, and it was like 56 minutes long, and there was no audio. So I think it's not meant to be shared. And I just had a weird beep on my computer. So what was that about? I don't know. Was I pressing a button? I don't know. Okay. So anyway, the details aren't as important as what the summary is, I believe, because I think anyone would have, a unique set of experiences that would put them in a position to be able to look at themselves, right? So I had that happen. And what I was being asked to look at within myself was that even though I was going through life and feeling pretty competent and comfortable and feeling like I was doing all the right things, my ego was a little bit hurt when I realized that I was being asked to honor myself more. Because my ego started feeling like, what do you mean more? I've been doing it. And so there was this little uncomfortable moment that I had where I was being asked to grow and learn past where I had already been. So when I noticed that my ego was pretty upset about it, like really upset about it, but I let that be, I let myself be and process and validated myself and was present with how that felt and cried about the fact that I wasn't as perfect as I thought I was. And then after I cleared that, I got to the space where I was like, oh, I see that there is space for me to honor myself more on a deeper level that I wasn't even aware of before. And it's not that I was doing something wrong. It's just that part of my ego was really content on keeping us safe by doing the right thing and didn't want to realize that there was something that she could have been doing better. But when it was time to do it better, that's when I was ready to do it better, right? Because to honor myself on a deeper level means that I need that foundation in order to do that. These are all things that I wouldn't have even been able to do or be aware of. Like if I heard myself, if I heard anyone talking about this and I wasn't about ready to be going through it myself, I probably would shrug it off, right? But if I wasn't in that kind of space where I was just going along in a false bubble of thinking that I had myself all figured out and I had life figured out, and if I wasn't in that, I might have been asking myself questions like, am I settling? Is there more to this? Am I playing small? Am I not allowing for myself to be seen authentically? in all circumstances, right? Because if I had been asking myself questions like that, I would have had to have honest answers, and the answers were that sometimes I was not fully myself because it was easier to try to fit in. And not that I was consciously trying to fit in, it's just that I don't fit in. And I was just trying to let that just go under the radar. Because, whenever I'm around other people, it's kind of like I can see the difference between the way my mind works and the way I operate and the way they operate. And that's okay, right? But there was a part of me that was knew that some people wouldn't be okay with that. And so I would just let it seem like I was the same as them, And maybe they bought that and maybe they didn't. But what it came down to was that means that I couldn't be myself fully. And with this realization, I had to accept the fact that I was still learning and making mistakes, and that was okay. I had to accept the fact that I still had not fully honored myself to a depth that I could go to now. And once I did those things, I really did feel like, oh, wow, honoring myself to a deeper depth means that I actually get to feel excited to be me. And I had to clear all those things that I just talked about before I got to that. And even feeling excited for being me was a foreign feeling that I had not allowed for myself. And I had to even sit with that feeling. A lot of times when we're clearing shadows and triggers, we're sitting with uncomfortable feelings that are more negative. But this was a positive feeling that I hadn't allowed for myself associated with myself. So as I allowed myself to feel an excitement for being me, I really, really understood why spirit, why universe, why, this journey brought me to a place where even though I thought everything, that I was who I am and this is how things were going to be, and even though I felt very content and happy and fine with that, I'm so glad that I was pushed. Because now I realize, oh my gosh, I would have been selling myself short. I would have been having an experience that's sort of half-ass. I would have been having an experience that's not, I heard someone say that word recently, and then it just came to me when I was talking about this. But I would have had an experience where I was not fully honoring myself. And I don't want to get to the end of this life and feel like, oh, I didn't fully live. I didn't fully honor myself. Because if I'm not fully honoring myself, then I'm not fully living. Then I'm just going through the motions. Then I'm just doing the things to keep myself safe, and I'm surviving basically. But I want to be thriving. And if I'm going to thrive, then I have to play my part. And that part involves me being me. And when I was going to these levels, right, and I was just really, it was really, really settling in on me that I really do like myself. And I don't have to shrink down, I think the bigger thing for me was that I knew that some people weren't happy for me when I started succeeding. I had no one left around me that I could share my successes with. Because anyone that I had close to me previously would fall away as soon as I started having wins and wanted to talk about that, or just that they could see it. And I didn't feel supported, and I felt like I had to play small. And it may have been my own limiting belief and not their behavior at all, because I was seeing them through the filter of my own stuff. In some cases, it was definitely them, but you know what I mean? There's some people where it was probably much more subtle. Maybe they weren't even aware of it, but, I didn't feel like there was like a room for me to bloom. And so coming into this deeper level of honoring myself is like, oh, yeah, of course I'm going to bloom. I'm allowed to bloom. I can take up the space of blooming. And if somebody else is mad about that because they're not blooming themselves, like, I hope that they'll eventually get over it and get to blooming themselves too, you know? And part of it too was like, I wanted to fit in, right? And if other people weren't challenging themselves to bloom, I didn't want to either, because I didn't want to be like, a shiny spot in a sea of people who are suffering, or sea of pessimism, That doesn't sound very fun. It sounds like I'm going to get targeted. It sounds like people are going to be annoyed and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's just an idea. That's just a belief, right? And that belief kept me playing small. But what I realize when I get past that, and when I get to the place where I am willing to deeply honor myself, that doesn't even come into it. It doesn't matter anymore. That's not a thing. It's like the joy of being me far exceeds the fear or worry that they are not going to like it. It feels so good to be me that I wouldn't stop doing it for somebody's comfort, And not like a ha 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 way, but just like I must do this. I must live to my fullest. I must do it. And I want the best for you too, and I hope that you'll bloom too. And whether you do or not doesn't affect whether I do or not. And the people who are willing to allow that for me are the ones that I'm going to keep in my life, but within any proximity. So I think that being pushed to this was, there was those moments where I was just being pushed out of that comfort zone and being challenged, like, oh, well, what about this? What about not honoring yourself fully? It's like, of course I'm honoring myself fully. It's like, it's like, okay, well, I have to admit that when you say that and I get upset, it seems like it might have hit a nerve, When I say, when you say that, it's like a message from spirit, right? It's like, all right, spirit, I guess I'm going to have to look at this, and begrudgingly, like, ugh, like, was this how you had to teach me? My ego. I let my ego be a little brat for a minute, but just a few minutes it took for my ego to just kind of run its course, like saying things like that, like, oh, this is how you had to teach me. You couldn't just come out and tell me. You couldn't just be straightforward. You had to give me all these experiences and wear me down and make me look at myself in a reflection. Yeah, my ego was taking a little baby fit for a minute, but then once that quelled down and I had my tears and, and then I got to going with the movement of my growth instead of trying to resist it. And then, of course, that was a lot of relief. And once I got that relief, it was enough to let it happen. And it was enough to like go through the process. And it's like, okay, yeah, there's a process here. Okay, I can just do the process. And then it's like, oh yeah, I validate, or acknowledge, validate, accept, be present with whatever comes up. And then, that expanded my awareness around the whole topic. And that brought me to the space where I was actually thankful for the experience, even though it was uncomfortable for those moments. And, sometimes it's uncomfortable for more than just moments. There was probably a low level discomfort in the days leading up to the realization, because, like I said, I was put in these series of experiences that did pressurize me a little bit and show me a reflection. And I didn't really love the reflection that I was seeing. But I knew it was a reflection, but I didn't really want to own the reflection because I didn't love what I was seeing, And it was basically that I wasn't honoring myself. And I saw it by seeing that I wasn't honoring others. It wasn't always the case that I would not honor others. It's just like I was in a highly stressful situation where I was needing to rely on others. And that's not usual either. And then I was put in, in a position to just like feel that I could have handled something much more competently, right? If I could have done it myself, it would have been handled much better, right? So then I start like feeling like, well, why can't they just do it better, right? And then, knowing though that they are in their process, that they're allowed to be where they're at when they're there, that it's all perfect. Like I don't get to tell them to be better because I want them to be better, They're learning, they're figuring things out, they're doing them, and they're allowed to, right? So I knew I wasn't honoring them, right? But I was not quite willing to look at it as a reflection yet. And then when I was pushed to look at it as a reflection, it was like, oh, yeah, I'm not honoring them because I'm actually not honoring me. And I'm not honoring me by playing small and not being the full version of myself, which might repel them. And so if I just honor me, then this probably isn't going to be a problem anymore. Interesting how that works. Or if it is a problem, it's not going to bother me as a problem. It's just going to be an experience, right? Where, I'm working with somebody else, they're assisting me with something and they don't do it the way I would have done it. And they have to learn a lesson through that process. Okay, that's life. That's people. I love people. And they get to be in that process. And me too, right? Like I get to be the version of myself that didn't quite get it, that wasn't quite honoring herself. And then when I get to the place where I'm willing to honor myself on a deeper level, great, we did it. Very worthwhile. So yeah, I thought about how those questions could have really helped me where if I guess I was just kind of, I had stopped being so focused on shadow work. I really did, and I needed to do that. But because I stopped, I just wasn't looking. And then it's like, oh, there's something to look at. Oh. And so I'm also finding that honoring myself means that I keep looking, but I just don't let it take up all my time. That's not like my one operating system to always look inward with every reflection I see outside, but to sprinkle that in with having fun, enjoying life, growing, learning, taking the uncomfortable steps out of the known place that I've been living and how I've expected things to be. Because what would I miss out on if I never did that? What would I miss out on? Oh my gosh, that's probably like a huge fear I have, is of getting to the end of my life and realizing that I didn't do it yet. I don't want to not do it. I need to do all the things that I'm capable of. I want to live this life to my fullest. And then an example is like if I'm looking at other people and saying, oh, they're not doing it right, they're not living it to the fullest, because I'm gauging them by my standards. That's not very fair or right. People could do the same thing to me. They could be like, oh, well, if you were really wanting to be the best version of yourself, why aren't you focusing on fitness and working out every day and blah, 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 right? Because maybe their gauge for life and what success is seen through the eyes of fitness, whereas mine is more well-rounded. And so far doesn't involve a daily workout. But it doesn't mean that I don't value movement and nutrition and fitness and health and all that. But obviously it's not my like main focus in life, and it hasn't been ever. Play is the way that I will get exercise, that's always been it for me, and that's fine, but anyway, it's just an example of like that, something that I can think of where other people could look at me, where they've had a life that fitness came very easy for them, and that was something that they wanted to focus on and got enjoyment from, and they could look at me through that lens for them and be like, well, why aren't you doing better, and that's the equivalent of me looking at other people, since I'm so adept at shadow work, and I look at them and go, why aren't you doing it better? It's the same thing, and it's neither one of them are appropriate, because each one of us are on our own individual paths, and we don't get to dictate that path for other people. And when I'm really fully honoring myself, I don't even want to. In fact, it keeps things interesting to see where people are at and how they're handling their process. It's exciting. It's exciting to also like live as me. I know that sounds so crazy. I think that before I shifted, that I would have heard somebody saying that and been less like, this person's annoying and ridiculous, and but it's just true. And I had it, I've only had one day of practice at it, by the way, at the honoring myself at this deeper level. And there were, a few times in the day where I just kind of forgot about it, but I kept bringing myself back around to it, and just like kept reminding myself. And because I had like worked through that block on feeling excitement for being me, I was allowing myself to feel excitement for being me, which actually is a version of me that likes to dance, that moves a lot, actually. I thought that was very interesting, where I, in the car, everywhere I was, just walking around this function that I went to today at a country club, mingling, talking to people, strangers, just starting conversations, where these are, I might not have done that. Well, I probably would have done that, but not the way I did it today. I don't know. Things felt different. Things felt different because I was different, and it felt really good. Yeah. So I think, like, what if I didn't like ever allow myself to that? What if I didn't allow this for myself? What if I was just like ignoring it and being like, no, spirit, you can't, and I let my ego win, and I just was like, no, I'm doing it perfect. I've got this all figured out. Don't you dare tell me I'm not doing it. I know I'm already doing it. I would have cut myself off, What if I was just like, oh, this is the way I am, deal with it. This is how I do it. I'm making sure that I take care of me. I want to make sure I'm safe, so I'm going to do what I got to do. This is how I manage life. And the same thing with like having to depend on other people in the last few days. I just found like, oh gosh, like I do not like having to depend on other people, right? And also like, gosh, I've learned so many things that this person could adopt to have a better life. And now looking back at those thoughts that I was having at the time, like, it's so silly. Of course that person's got to learn their own way. I'm not their teacher. If they asked me to be their teacher, if they observed me, maybe they could learn something, but like, that's not what I'm here for them, necessarily, unless they decide that. I feel like if I kept talking, I would just say the same thing over and over again. So that's what I have to share. I have allowed myself the excitement of being me. Highly recommend. Highly recommend.